Welcome to Contemporary Black Voices, excuse me. And we are in our Hot Topic segment. And we have several topics we want to talk about today, starting with the campus encampments, the protest encampments. So we're seeing a lot of these encampments, especially like around New York City, being torn down, students being suspended, students, and the reason why these encampments are showing up is because of their protests for what's going on the Gaza Strip. So they're the pro-Palestinian protests that we're seeing. And so we're seeing the encampments in Austin now. But students are trying to make a statement. What do you guys think?
I think that I'm all for it. So no, but you know what? Kids, I can see both sides. So I see some of the campuses saying, "Look, guys, we understand, and we understand your rights to protest, but we are moving into a commencement phase." I've been receiving emails every day from Fletcher School, and so each email is getting more serious about getting ready for commencement. You know what I mean? So if you, at the very least, we need to move these protests so that they don't interrupt with our commencement ceremonies, because people who worked hard for the last 4 years, or if they're graduate students for the last 2 years, or if they're doctoral students for the last 6 years or whatever, they have a right to celebrate. Their families have a right to celebrate. We get your message. We get your right to protest, but now you are disrupting other students. But the other thing I want to talk about is that some of these universities are taking a very, very heavy hand. I understood that, there was a barricade at Columbia, but they went in there and one of the officers actually discharged his weapon.
By mistake.
Was it?
I think it was by mistake.
It was a discharge. And they're investigating the discharge.
Okay.
But the other thing is they're employing flash bang grenades against college kids. You know what I mean? And those are things they're not poppers. You know what I mean? They're not firecrackers. They do cause damage. They do cause hearing damage. They can the percussion from those things. It's very serious. And so these people are employing that kind of weaponry against college students who are protesting. So that's another thing another space that we definitely need to watch.
Well, I'd like to add two things that really come to my mind on this is that, one, you have organizers that are not college students that are organizing these things. So you really don't have a true college voice if you have folks that are organizing it that are not even part of the university. And then secondly, peaceful protests, I advocate for it everywhere. But there's now been where Jewish students are being targeted, and there's hate. And that's just not the synergy you want in this situation. You need a peaceful protest. And I think, just like anything, these students and these organizers went too far. They've gone too far now to where they've created chaos on campuses that are disrupting the normal cycle of a college experience. So that's where I kind of draw the line.
Let me say something. There's a couple things, first of all, I wanted to talk about, but I'm going to focus on when you bring up about Jewish students. And a lot of the campuses, as well as the current presidential administration, wants to make this out to be that you're anti-Semitic because you're against the killing in Gaza. My feeling is right now, you've got a situation in Gaza where they're killing that every human should be against that. And we as the United States, nor any student, and the students that are talking about they don't want their money from their tuition to be supporting that type of stuff. I support all of that, okay? I don't know why Brown is a school that has been able to say and look at this and handle this in a different regard, and to look at maybe divestment and there not be any issues at Brown, whereas all these other campuses have said, we're going to resist, and we're going to say that you're anti-Semite for even taking a stance against this, which I think is wrong.
Well, one of the issues that we had mentioned last week is some of the consequences, if you will, that's emerging from these protests and these encampments. One is we're seeing the emergence of what they call the new Ivies, where the traditional Ivy League campuses are not being as attractive for seeking a future employment for people or hires for into Wall Street, into these major Fortune 500 companies, and they're looking at the new Ivies, such as the University of Florida,
Oh, come on.
UT Austin, and other locations. These are the places where these large companies are focusing their attention on versus at the traditional Ivy League colleges. But going back to your point, I am for one for peaceful protests, but I can't help but think that there's got to be some agitators within these protests that's causing the bulk of the problems. Because before we saw the violence that take place, these students were basically saying, stop this bombing, stop the killing, stop this. You didn't see all this, and then right about the right time, we started seeing violence occur to where they're breaking out windows in buildings. They're holding Jewish students hostage for a certain period of time. We're seeing all this stuff going on. So I think that this is a plan, this violence is a planned violence versus what the original intent was for the students protesting against an event, on the Gaza Strip.
But even if it is, from my standpoint, I'm saying the bottom line is that you've got a genocide going on in Gaza, and none of us can really be for that. And I think that whatever, I'm one that's not for the violence either, but it's almost whatever it takes, whatever the party calls for, because we've been in that situation. Jewish people have been in that situation. There's a lot of ethnic groups that have been in that situation. Nobody wants to be in that situation. So as human beings, if we want to get to a world where humans are policing humans, then this is what we're doing.
So but to Chris's point, so Brown played it smart. When their protest first started, they said, "What do you want? Divestment? Got it. Hey, no press it." You know what I mean? So we'll look into it. They agreed. They could squash it. So they did play it smart. But no, I think, and I also think there's a bit of media bias that plays into this because the media is showing one side of it. There's no doubt. I think NYU or NYPD is saying that 30% of the people who are protesting are not students at
And
NYU.
I don't believe that, but okay.
Right. No, yeah, because and always you always find that co-opt of different movements and people have their own agenda. And I think we had talked about that. It was at University of Chicago. There's an environmentalist element to their protest and a Black Lives Matter element to their protest. And so you have different organizations and different agendas that have kind of co-opted the original protest. But again, like there was an incident at UC Berkeley where there was a counter protest of Jewish students who started throwing smoke bombs and pyrotechnics into a peaceful Palestinian protest. So there has been violence on both sides, but I think the media only documents when there's violence on one side.
Yeah, I think it's really one-sided that people. I don't know what happens with the Jewish community. And I think for the most part, everybody worldwide has been with the Jewish community. But you even have the Jewish people who are saying what Netanyahu is doing now has really gone too far.
Right.
So you got some of the Jewish people who are saying, we want him gone. And I think you brought this up before, Caleb, by saying, he has a vested interest in wanting to keep this going, because once this is over, he's gone.
He has to go.
He's got to go.
Right.
Yeah.
So no, and again, like you said, there's a difference between calling for peace and being anti-Semitic.
Right.
You know what I
exactly.
mean? And so everyone regrets the loss of life. There was 1,500 that Hamas had killed and captured, and now we're up to 36,000. The majority of which are women and children that have perished in this assault on Gaza. And so people are saying, this is a very heavy-handed over response. And so people are calling for peace. And so I think I think that people have to understand that when you call for peace and call for the cessation of violence against women and children, that's not anti-Semitic.
And I want to
No
say
one
one
here
more
is
thing to you,
anti-Semitic.
Caleb. Not to you, but I guess to the whole audience. But I believe this going forward in what Israel is causing, especially to the United States with this war against Hamas, is going to be the single most promotion for terrorists in our country, period, that we've probably ever seen before. I'll leave it at that.
Well, let me just add this. I mean, we've not talked a lot about this, but it reminds me of when Pancho Villa invaded America, New Mexico, attacked and killed American soldiers, and he went back into Mexico. And he was protected by the Mexican community. They hid him. So Hamas is part of Palestine. But you don't see a lot of pushback from normal Palestinians saying, Hamas, you did something you shouldn't do. We don't want you to rule. They're entrenched in the Palestinian regime, which I'm not giving any excuse because I am also against genocide in any way, shape, or form. But that's the politics happening on that side of the world where they're just attacking one another. We're trying to allow for peaceful protest because it's wrong, but the elements that are coming into our country are trying to create divisiveness. We sympathize with both fronts as far as I'm concerned. We understand the Israelis' concerns. We don't want life to be taken unnecessarily. I just wish in the Palestinian community, they would say, Hamas, we don't want you leading this because what you did was wrong.
I think some of them have said that. I mean,
I've not heard too much of that.
Yeah, we've heard, I think, some of that. They are saying, we don't believe in what Hamas is doing. But at the same time, you don't see, and I think to your point is that you're not seeing that being reported so that you are able to hear that. And just like there's some Israelis who are saying, we don't want anything bad to happen to the Palestinians. We've got some differences, okay, but we don't want to see all the killing and the stuff that's happening. But again, to both of your point, you've got some other agitators in there that are keeping this stuff going back and forth with each other. But it's not really valid. It's not, I don't want to say valid. It's not really something that's helping the United States, I think, at this time.
So, I mean, initially, Hamas was elected in Gaza. Okay, they initially was elected, but they haven't held an election in more than a decade. So you have a situation where they are the de facto government, and they're the ones who control the nation. They control the weapons. They control the police force, the security forces, and so you have a situation where the average Palestinian is being held hostage by this armed entity. Now, not saying that they don't agree, because you fight with the weapons you have. They don't have tanks. They don't have an air force. They don't have it. So you fight with the weapons you have. So Hamas does represent some segment of the population. They are some segment of the resistance, similar to the argument with the African National Congress and their armed division. And so it's like saying, you know what, South Africans, you need to reject ANC and say ANC doesn't represent you. But at the same time, you fight with the weapons you have. You fight oppression, such as apartheid government, with what you have. And so Hamas is the tool that they have that represents, that fights that kind of oppression. At the same time, the Israeli people are being held hostage by a right-wing Likud government, such as Netanyahu. So you have two different folks that are being held hostage by the far right elements of their society. And so both sides need to rid themselves of those elements in order to find probably a just and lasting peace.
One of the things that was said on on another show was that these encampments, these protests, has probably shut down the vote from young people for Biden. And so they're saying, again, they're saying that the protests may now become a pro-Trump piece. Where the students are actually helping MAGA. So at some point in time, I agree with the protests. The message is loud and clear, but I think that now this protest can't go on as long as can't go on much longer. Because yes, the students are disrupting other students' rights to getting an education, other students' rights to graduate. They're affecting professors' rights to teach. So at some point in time, they're going to have to disband and try to get some normalcy back in, but or have weekend protests or something.
Well, I think a lot of those students are going home anyway. You know, especially all the ones from the Ivy schools are going home anyway. So, and they're going home to work for mom and dad.
I think that's going to be the key is what happens after graduation.
Right, to see if it's sustained.
See if it's sustained.
Right,
I think that's going to be the key.
And I wonder if those students that participated won't be allowed back. I mean, we just don't know what's going to happen with their trajectory, with their own education.
Right.
And it's almost shameful because they have a right to protest, but being caught up in this, hopefully cooler heads prevail and these students can continue.
They got money. They're coming back.
Those kids, you know what? Especially those kids at Ivy. Those kids, they gotta be okay. They gotta be okay. So,
Just upset mom and dad for women.
yeah, that's all it is.
And they didn't want to be in school no way.
Yeah. But just I know, we're not making light of it. We're making light of the fact that these kids from the Ivy League, a lot of these kids that have money and resources. But no, it's definitely it's a serious issue, and our hearts go out to people who are affected on both sides. 30,000, 36,000. That is a tragedy. That's a human tragedy. And our hearts definitely, and they certainly go out to, and again, in our prayers and more than anything, we want to find a just and lasting peace for all those involved.
But the big thing here also is that the powers to be need to pull in some student representatives to hear them talk. And that's probably one of the big things. The big thing here is who have they asked to come talk to them about the issues. And as long as these students don't feel no one's talking to them or willing to listen to them, it could be a long, hot summer. And with that being said, we're going to go ahead and move on to the next topic. Now, Mr. Macias, you're going to probably enjoy this one because I went ahead and bookmarked it on my laptop.
What's that one?
Semester at the Sea.
Semester at sea. All right. So, okay. So no, what it is? So a couple of things. So one, I just came back from Italy, and so when I was over there, OU has a program. They have a campus in Arezzo. They also have a campus in Mexico. There are several colleges, several universities that have these overseas campuses. In addition, so there were students over there. I'll give you an example. At the OU program, the students have their own dorm. They're traveling throughout Italy. When there's an extended holiday, they're traveling throughout Europe. They have their own chef that cooks them breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Wow.
And so, yeah. So, I mean, but when I was over there, there were no kids. There were no black and brown kids that participated in this program. The other program that I learned about was while I was over there was a semester at sea, where the kids spend a semester or two on a cruise ship, going from port to port, and learning aboard a cruise ship. And when I inquired about the demographics of the semester at sea program, it was kind of the same as the program in Italy. So there's a lack of diversity in these programs, and so my question was, is it because of lack of awareness? Is it a lack of access? And why aren't more black and brown kids exposed to these programs? And how do we get them exposed to these kind of programs? And these programs, I mean, they're beneficial. They expose kids to different cultures, they expose kids to they let kids know that they're part of a larger global community. And so I think this kind of classic education and classic exposure is very important for our kids to have. And so what do you think about that?
You absolutely get no disagreement from me. I've had the benefit of being a military dependent. So I lived 4 years in Europe. I lived in DC, lived in Turkey. I saw a lot, and it really helped in my own development. So I've been a big advocate in my own family. Get out there. And so it's essential that the continuum of education from pre-K through 12 and higher ed kind of talk, because you need to educate a child who's going through elementary and middle school about these opportunities. We're thinking too much of just in that course grade and not talking about what's after high school. And so I think if we were to develop inroads for this information to filter to middle schoolers and to high schoolers, they would then have this seed planted. Hey, you know, when I get to college, this is probably something I would like to do, and add that to their options. But we're not doing that enough. You know, it's almost like a fight to survive day by day, and we're not looking at the long-term opportunities that students may be able to have. And so I would certainly want to bring that to Judson ISD and get some exposure about the international things.
I know that being a military brat myself, that I tend to look at things a little bit differently because of that exposure. And not that I've traveled to a lot of places, but, you know, spending 4 years in Japan, you know, and then, you know, that was a lot right there. To where you start seeing the world from a different set of lens, and then you also looking at the world from a different set of lens in relation to the world you live in, and you start your knowledge widens even more so to where your level of tolerance is different than if you didn't have this exposure.
I think one thing that all of you are saying is that, number one, one of the greatest educations is to be able to travel. Okay. And when you're able to see and understand different cultures, that affects that child in a different way than anything that they can hear or see in a book. To you, Caleb, I say there's nobody better to ask the question as to what's going on from the standpoint of why we don't know about these things. I look at you as being a very educated person, and to say, if you don't know about it, then it's definitely obscure or being obscured from the rest of the people that they're not being able to learn. The question then goes for me even a little bit further to say, with DEI on the horizon, okay, is it going to be even more obscure than it is now because of those things that are happening?
I think so. Because, I mean, when we're restricting kids' access to these larger institutions through things like we're re-implementing testing, standardized testing, and we know that Black and brown kids don't do well in standardized testing. We're eliminating DEI programs from campuses, so campuses have become a lot less diverse. So, of course, that's going to limit our kids' access to these kind of programs. So the universities that can afford these kind of programs are going to be your big, giant R1 research universities or some of your top elite universities. And so when we limit our kids' access to those kind of universities, we're definitely limiting their access to this international exposure.
And I went on the website and I looked at the countries that these students are going to. They're not only going to England or Great Britain or France, they're also going to Mexico, to Africa. They're going to those countries and continents to where our kids can see them under different contexts as well. So I think that in terms of educators, in terms of parents, that we need to find out, first of all, who is the marketing representative of Semester at Sea? And maybe invite them out to your location to speak to the program, because that's how the word gets out. And there's a lot of programs. I know that some kids going back in high school, counselors may not be telling students about certain scholarships. But the only way you're going to know about those scholarships is to find out about scholarships, and you just push it out more and more. So we know about it, that we got 4 people here who didn't know about it. Now we know about it. And so now it's up to us to push that information out more and more.
Well, and let me just add this. Right now, we all know that the Alamo Promise came in, and you're talking about tuition-free college. But that is a community college system that's working on workforce certifications as well as transferring. So you have already a situation where Alamo College is recognized only 46 or 47% of our community was going into higher ed to begin with. So you already have half the pool not going in. Now you're trying to increase that percentage. I just don't think a number of our minority students are hearing of these programs. They wouldn't hear about it in a 2 years pool right now. But there needs to be more in reaching out to systems like that. Hey, community college system, why can't you do that too? If you're trying to give a bona fide quality education and perspective.
It's always more than, and I love athletics, but I think that as a community, we need to be pushing our kids beyond basketball, beyond football, to where they can have those experiences that can sustain them even longer than football, basketball.
And I tell you what, Doc, I got a recent college grad. Recent high school grad. Maybe a blessing. Hold on, let me see. So, recent high school grad. And so I went, me and my wife, we walked into they have the college counselor's office or whatever it is. And I was looking on the shelves, and Army brochures, Air Force brochures, Navy brochures, Space Force brochures, Alamo colleges, and a few other ones, and A&M Kingsville. You know what I mean? Maybe A&M San Antonio. Maybe there was. So I'm looking around. So there was no HBCU section. Okay, that's one. But then there were no sections that for schools like Rice or UT Austin or even like an OU. And so I'm talking to the advisors and talking about the lack of. Well, I was talking about the lack of HBCU representation, but I was also talking about the schools that they were channeling these kids into. You know what I mean? And so the school was not Judson. It was not Judson, but the campus that my kid did graduate from, there was a dearth of broader educational opportunities and the schools that they were channeling these kids into. To me, it seemed like they were limiting the kids. They were limiting the kids' potential, limiting kids' aspirations. You know what I mean? Because, hey, you know what? Put the Harvard brochures on the shelf. Put the Yale and the Princetons and put those on the shelves. You know what I mean? Let the kids see that. Let the kids understand that, hey, these are not beyond your potential. You don't, and no, I'm not disparaging. A&M Kingsville is wonderful, but there are other opportunities besides, you know what I mean, the Alamo colleges or your local or regional, college branches. You know what I mean? So it's just, to me, it's just like, I don't know, what we used to call the politics of low expectation. You know what I mean? And so you have to let these kids know that this is something that you can accomplish too.
Well, parents play a big role in that, right? The support system at home and also inspiring their children. Right now, I tell you, when I was going to high school, my father just wanted me to join the military. No aspiration of a higher ed or anything. You join the military, you're going to copy what I did, you're going to do great. And I did. But 3-4 years into my enlistment, I said, you know what? I want a college degree. Why can't I get a? My counselor didn't think I was ready, and she told me when you're going to the military, that's what you need to do. So we as students back then need to be able to realize we can do more. That's why I talk about inspiring this next generation to know they can obtain. So when my daughter was going to the decision maker, I said, you can go wherever you want. She picked Ithaca College in upstate New York to go to school, and I asked her what your backup plan was. She said Alaska. So by that time, that was a tendency to say, hey, I planted the seed that you can go anywhere you want to go. And she pushed that needle. And she was phenomenal at Ithaca College, but the only Judson student to go there. But it's a matter of parents inspiring as well as a community inspiring our children to look further than just this community for college or career.
Okay.
All right. So what was the next one? Hot topic.
Hot topic. The next topic was the new black med schools.
The new black.
We got a new black med school.
We have a new black med school.
Where?
Yeah, I was going to ask
on the
where.
Gulf Coast, Gulf Coast, and it is affiliated with.
Oh, Florida?
No.
It's in Mississippi.
Mississippi. And it is affiliated with what college?
I forgot what college. But okay. We should be ashamed of ourselves.
I know we should be ashamed. Right?
The Gulfport area there in Mississippi with Biloxi.
Yeah, but it's affiliated with an HBCU. So it's we're gonna have a third HBCU that's gonna have a
med school.
Prominent med school.
And what's really nice about this is that, first of all, the Republicans are making it to where med schools cannot do any DEI teaching in the programs, and one size fits all. Well, one size doesn't fit all. Our body composition is a little bit different from white folks and vice versa. And so now that these schools are coming into play, more and more Black schools are coming into play, we now have a pool of physicians who can do more to help the needs of Black patients, or even Hispanic patients, because they're more open to teaching diversity in medicine versus traditional law schools where they're being threatened to not do this or we'll take your funding away.
So I want to say, was it 80%? 80% of Black doctors come from
HBCUs.
So, and I want to say it's about somewhere roughly 80% of lawyers, of Black lawyers, and probably 80% of Black engineers come out of HBCUs. And so to have an additional Black medical school it's phenomenal. And so it definitely opens up for an additional pool of applicants to get accepted into medical school. And so you traditionally have Howard and Meharry that turn out, you know what I'm saying, this
Xavier.
Is it Xavier? So it's in Louisiana. Okay, so it's Xavier in Louisiana. That is Xavier is phenomenal school. So another Black medical school. So again, like I say, and it comes at a perfect time. Howard had 37,000 freshman applications this year.
Wow.
Yeah, phenomenal. And so when you have that number of applicants, and of course Howard couldn't accept them all. So I mean, this opens up another avenue for those kids whose aspirations are to become doctors. And so it is phenomenal, and we definitely celebrate that.
There was a Black med student who was appalled that he didn't see any illustrations in his medical books that represented Black people. So he started doing these phenomenal illustrations that showed up on Facebook, where he was showing a Black woman's, belly. I mean, insides when she was pregnant and how the baby may be positioned and stuff. He was showing what the skin looks like in relation to white people's skin. He was showing all of this, he says, because none of this stuff is showing up in his medical books. Right. So we've got an artist out there who happens to be a doctor who is showing the intricacies of the Black body.
Right. No, and it's important. And I just to give you an example, when I go to the doctor, they stick me 3 or 4 times because my skin is very dark, and it's difficult for them to find a vein.
Can't see anything.
They can't see the vein, and so I get stuck and stuck. And I'm like, you know what? Just stick it in the hand. You know what I'm saying? But no, and so it's important for doctors who understand that and who look like you and who can work with you, or who understands, who can speak to you in the language that you understand. You know what I mean? And stress the importance of conditions that afflict our community. Who can talk to us about high blood pressure, who can talk to us about diabetes, who can talk to us about sickle cell, who understand these conditions and how they affect us. You know what I mean?
Now you'll hear that there's no need for those type of institutions and that kind of rhetoric, and I disagree. I think right now we still haven't become what we will become one day, and I think we have made strides over the last 100 years in this country. But the reality is that there are programs that need to be created to support Black students, Hispanic students, to give them the impetus and support that's needed, because you're right. We are all unique. We all have strengths and weaknesses, but we need a support system. And I see HBCUs as well as HSIs, Hispanic Serving Institutions, as sort of being that support system that the student may not have received when they were growing. Not that they weren't loved. I'm not saying any of that, but sometimes when you're a first generation college student, regardless if it's HBCU or HSI, you need cultivation, and you need to be inspired, and you need to be supported. I see institutions like that offering that level of support. Because going to med school is no easy feat in any way, shape, or form. But that support needs to be there, and I'm glad to see that there is now some avenues, and hopefully there's more, because we all know that we're lacking in diversity of Black doctors and even Hispanic doctors. So there is a lack of that needs to now come forward.
Before we close out, I got a test for you. There's only one school in the United States that has dual certification of HBCU and historically Hispanic.
And I will be at that institution today. And I looked for any others, because I'm going to be making that remark today at St. Philip's College, which again has that dual designation of being an HBCU and an HSI.
Put it right here. That's a good
So what was
answer.
the other? We had another. Do we have another?
No, we talked about the new Ivies,
The new
earlier.
Ivies? Oh, the new Ivies. That's ridiculous because Texas has always been a premier institution. And depending on oil prices, it either has the number 1 or number 2 endowment in the country. No, that's ridiculous. Emory has always been a premier institution. Rice has always been a premier institution. I don't think they included Berkeley in the list, but Berkeley is a premier institution. Chicago is a premier institution. Of course,
A&M.
Yeah.
They have quality. We're still working.
That horse of the Red Raider, the back end of the horse of the Red Raider of Texas Tech, it faces Texas A&M.
I did not know that.
But yeah, UNC premier institution, Duke premier institution. So this idea of new Ivies.
But I am glad, though, that the corporations are realizing that there is talent at other schools versus solely at Harvard, Yale, and Princeton. So that is a big thing for me, that they're realizing even more and more that there are other fish in the sea.
Or and then there's always been the baby Ivies, Smith and Wesleyan and Amherst and all those. You know what I mean? The Tufts, all the baby Ivies are out there. You know what I mean? So there's always been whether big Ivy, baby Ivy, or new Ivy. These schools are premier institutions. Regardless. Chicago is insane. You know what I mean? So yeah, MIT, Caltech. You know what I mean? So yeah, this idea, new Ivies. I don't know where to get. Anyway.
But that being said, we want to thank you for listening in on our conversation of hot topics. And this is Contemporary Black Voices. My name is Dr. Sharon Michael Chadwell. We have Caleb Alexander, Chris Dawkins, and our special guest. We want to say thank you for being here, Mr. Jose Macias Jr. And with that being said, this again is a Contemporary Black Voices, telling our stories our way.
All right.